Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and you're gonna be a super spicy person after watching this video. Lady wouldn't vacate private parking space. Good luck finding your licenseless car in another country police impound lot. I have lived in an apartment complex in Lisbon, Portugal. The where is important for the last 4 years. If anyone's from here, you'll know the parking is hell. Fortunately, my building has a private garage. However, as is often the case, some parking places are more difficult to park in than others. I have one of the easier ones. Last year I was offered a job abroad and took it. Thought I'd be nice, parked my car at my parents' where they have plenty of space and left a notice in the building elevator that went along the lines of, "I'm the owner of 3B and will be away for at least 6 months, feel free to use my parking spot." I ended up being away for longer, almost a year. I came back to see my parking spot occupied, which was okay since I offered for it to be used. I put another notice in the elevator, this time to say that I was back and would use the parking spot again. I gave it 2 days and picked my car up from my parents. I went into the garage and my space was still being used. I had to park somewhere on the street and decided to give it another day. The day after, it was occupied again by the same car. I asked a couple of neighbours and figured out it belonged to a lady living 2 stories above me. I went up to talk to her, and she immediately got defensive and said that her parking spot is very difficult for her to park in, and since I was away for longer than I had announced, I had lost the space. Which is stupid logic, as the spots are bought with the apartment, it literally belongs to me. She also told me I couldn't use her parking space instead as she was using it for storage. I went to the building admin, who said he talked to her. He did, and came back shaking his head. Nothing. I sent a registered letter telling her to stop using my space and giving her 48 hours to take her car elsewhere. The next day, I saw the unopened letter in the garbage bin beside the mailboxes. I ended up scouting my garage, waiting for her to leave, and would immediately park my car, hoping she'd take the hint. She didn't, and we ended up doing this dance for a few weeks. Up until the day I came back to see my entire driver's side keyed. That was the final straw. I talked to a friend who owns a towing company. We chose a Saturday morning. The last few weeks she hadn't left home on Saturdays. I knew, as I'd been watching her car like a hawk. So I thought we'd have big chances of her not noticing anything until everything was done. And towed her car. The plan initially was to leave the car just down the road, but that felt too close and too easy. Then I thought about leaving it in a city about 15 minutes away, but it still didn't feel quite right. My friend jokingly said, "Let's leave it in Madrid." FYI, Madrid is in Spain, about 600 kilometers or 375 miles away. I knew he was joking, but Madrid did feel right. I asked if he had enough time. He had, so off we went. Once we got to Madrid, we went out for lunch, strolled around the city, and waited until it got dark and the streets were empty. In the meantime, we had already decided on where to leave the car, a handicapped parking space close to a police station, and so we did. As a bonus, my friend also took both license plates off the car, then we drove it back home. It has been 2 weeks and I haven't seen her car since. One of these days, I might leave a letter in her mailbox telling her to contact Madrid police. But in the meantime, I'll enjoy being able to use my parking whenever I want to. Wow. I mean, I'm sure the neighbour knows that it's OP he's done something to her car, so the fact there hasn't been a confrontation or a visit from the police is kinda surprising. Unless the neighbour thinks that OP has parked it somewhere else in the garage and she just hasn't found it yet. I'd love an update on this one, so I might check it out again next week. He lost his friends, his car, his job, and nearly lost an eye. I've been putting this off, but this is really the only nuclear revenge I've ever dealt out in my life. A little history about where I was before all of this. I had a very rocky relationship with my father, and my mum had just kicked me out at 19 with nowhere to go. My dad actually stepped up and helped me for the first time in my life by getting me into an apartment in my little podunk hometown in South Idaho. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd and started going to parties and doing the things I missed out on doing with friends in high school. I was a goody two-shoes up to that point, and a late bloomer who wasn't used to getting males' attention, meaning I was a virgin. I started hanging out at the park playing horseshoes and letting my friends get me absolutely trashed when I met a cowboy called Slick. I didn't have much of an interest in him other than just talking about old western movies. I'm a huge movie buff, and actors from the silver screen of classic 1950s movies. Slick and I both worked for the same company, as did 98% of the small town we lived in, so we knew each other in passing. He started coming in to get horse meds and other vet supplies and always asked me to wait on him. Okay, whatever, that was my job. One of our mutual friends invited me to a bonfire at their house, which was right across from where Slick was staying in a bunkhouse. I went not even expecting to see Slick there, and I'd actually taken one of my best friends with me to keep an eye out for me, because I've never been a trusting person due to past traumas as a kid. A few hours pass, we're all drinking, and Slick keeps putting his arm around me and trying to dominate whatever conversation I'm having with my friends, especially around my guy friends. I'm tipsy, and not really caring about it too much, and go off with a few of my girlfriends in a group where we're gossiping and talking. A couple hours pass by, and my friend I drove up to the party with took off with another friend for a beer run. They never came back to the party. The party is winding down. I don't feel comfortable driving home with any form of alcohol in my system, and Slick says he has a spare cot in his room I can have. I didn't feel comfortable going, but my other friends assured me that Slick was trustworthy. We got to his room. There was no cot. Slick says he'll sleep on the floor and we can watch Blazing Saddles because he heard it was one of my favourites. I said fine, and crawled into his bed fully clothed sans shoes. Well, I'm sure you can guess what happened, so I'm not going to delve into the very unpleasant details. I didn't sleep the whole night. I just laid in the bed in disbelief that that had happened. Actually happened. Once I knew he was asleep, I snuck out of his room and drove home, sobered by the experience. I don't know how long I sat in the shower, but the water ran cold and I called out sick from work for 2 days. Over the next few days, I had bruises that covered my entire body. I had bite marks and scratches and fingertip bruises everywhere. I had also developed one of the worst UTIs I've ever experienced in my life and called the town clinic for an examination to make sure everything was okay, and declined to report it because the cops in my very small and rural town always sided with the men when women I knew reported their assaults. Slick became an awful force in my life. When he wasn't bothering me at work, he was leaving dead rattlesnakes on my doorstep and telling all of our mutual friends and acquaintances how he had put another notch in his belt. And pretty soon after, all of his buddies stopped hanging around him when they realised he was a piece of crap. The revenge. My dad is a 6'8" giant Cossack Russian. He's worked as a machinist for many years, making his already big hands thick and calloused, important for later. He's a very intimidating man and has a violent streak. Because I was on bad terms with my mom, I turned to him, fully trusting him as someone I could confide in. His wife had to take pictures of my bruises for my doctor's file on my health to go with the assault report. I don't know why the doctor didn't take them herself. She told me to bring them in for the file. My dad was livid, but he pushed his fury deep down and waited for later. Slick drove a really crappy Oldsmobile. He also liked to go out drinking every day after work. A few of my friends had been filled in as to what Slick did, and thus the rest of the town knew as news spread like the plague in tiny towns. Slick's crappy car mysteriously caught on fire outside of a busy bar, yet nobody seeing anything regarding how it started. 2 weeks after his car burned up, my hometown had its annual birthday celebration. My dad goes to it every year and catches up with friends he hasn't seen in a long time. This means also visiting the town's bar. This is what my dad ended up telling me after everything happened. He walked in, said hello to the owner and demanded to know where the one called Slick was. The bar owner begged him not to make a huge scene and to just keep things civil since he knew what my dad was there for. He told my dad that Slick was playing poker on the deck out back, and my dad went out looking for him. He found Slick and asked him if Slick knew who he was. Slick was disrespectful and said he didn't give a care who he was. He was busy playing poker with his friends, who weren't really friends, but guys who knew my dad and just watched everything happen. Strike one. My dad told him he was OP's dad and he needed to talk to him about respecting young women. Slick said there wasn't anything about me to respect. Strike two. My dad tells Slick to get his ass out of the chair and speak to him like a man. Slick tells my dad to piss off. Strike three. My dad picked up Slick, who is 5'4" and at the time was 180-ish pounds, by his collar and stuck his thumb into Slick's right eye socket. My dad said he had never heard a grown man scream like a woman before, then all he could do was smile about it. He dropped Slick on the ground and walked out of the bar. My dad was afraid the cops were going to be coming for him, so he found me at the concession stand I was working at to tell me everything that happened before he left for home. Nobody called the cops. The following week, the bosses at the company caught wind of what Slick had done to me and already had an investigation open against him because they had noticed some very expensive horseshoeing tools had gone missing with him being the only person around at the time. I should add that the company, though very large, was a tight-knit family-oriented business in this small town. Both of my parents worked there, and the bosses had known me since I was knee-high. They were very upset, and ended up firing him and giving him 12 hours to vacate the company's premises, including the bunkhouse. I only saw Slick in person once more about a month later, and his eye was still black. I had a panic attack when I seen him, so I didn't stick around long for howdy-doos. And that's my NuclearRevenge story. It's long and a bit painful to remember, but I'm still healing and moving on from it 10 years later. My life has gotten better, and I know his life is miserable, and that makes me happy. Reading through the comments of this post, it looks like OP is now married with a good job and is doing really well. She also did some sleuthing on Slick and found out that he was briefly married, is currently drinking his life away, and apparently has frequent headaches and can't see out of his right eye very well. I guess that's what happens when you're a complete waste of life. Okay, so that's all for r/NuclearRevenge. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!